Audrey, what do you have here? What is this?
That's a poster for Women's March in 2018. 1 year anniversary after we went down to Washington, D.C. This time we marched with other congregants here in Upper West Side of New York. And it was a marvelous experience to see again that kind of determination, not only enthusiasm and creativity in all those signs and everything, but continued determination 1 year later. And the crowds were as large as they were almost a year ago. It was really, again, transformative for me to see that. What about you, Ashley?
Yeah, it is both amazing and somewhat disheartening that we had a crowd that big. It was amazing because I'm glad that there are that many people who came out in support of themselves, in support of women, and standing up for the rights of various people. But also, I'm a little frustrated that we still have to do this.
Yeah.
That 1 year later, I'm not going to say everything that we assumed was going to happen happened, because people had a lot of assumptions, but it's not getting better, and it's still necessary.
And you know, considering that election cycle, or however you would call it, I think that it'll continue for some time, because right now you have this Women's March actually saying march, run, and win.
Right.
And get out vote was one of the main themes of this march, and I think it is absolutely important for women to have their voices heard and to make an impact in our society.
Yeah.
So
I have a Facebook friend who I used to work with a long time ago, who does work around politics and getting women candidate supports, particularly women of color. And it's been interesting watching the different posts that she's made about supporting different candidates and different candidates that she has supported winning. It's been great to see more women running. It's been great to see more women winning. It's been great to see trans women getting elected to things. Like, I think if nothing else, there has indeed been this inspiration for women to get more into politics, or thinking that, like, if they were on the fence about it before, like, now is the time. And I'm really glad for that. We need more women of all kinds in politics. I think a lot of the issues that we are having today, a lot of issues that we've had for decades, stem from this complete and total lack of equality.
And even if you are not running, I think that my wife is, for instance, involved with postcards to voters, and everyone can join in it, and you can Google that and you'll see that it is well organized and has a real impact in many of those special elections, and hopefully down the road in the main elections. And so is there anything which is sticking in your mind, like a blotch on that march, or the problem? I have one, so
right. I've got two, and they kind of blend together. My first one, which is my major one, is that I think the Women's March still has some issues around intersectional feminism. I think that like walking around everywhere I go, really, like, I look around and see, like, who's around me, what do people look like, and for the most part, the people that are there are white women, and some men too, and there were a few people of color. A lot of them were also cisgender women. There were a few trans people that had signs identifying them as such, but for the most part, a lot of the people who were going were cisgender. They were white. And I think that more needs to be done to make this more intersectional. I realize that a lot of the planners in the DC March and in local areas are people of color, but there's a discrepancy there when people who are planning are people of color and people who are showing up aren't. And I think we need to ask questions about why that is, I know a lot of Black women who didn't come because they didn't want to come, because they didn't necessarily think that was a safe space for them, or they've been doing the work for years and years and years, and no one wants to listen to them, or or they didn't feel as if their issues were going to be truly represented. The other thing that
Talking about a safe space, you mean? Or,
well, not only just the idea of a safe space, but the idea that the issues of white women are not going to be the same as the issues of Black women, are not going to be the same as the issues of Latina women. It's not going to be the same as the issues of lots of other people, and the issues of straight women aren't going to be the same as the issues of queer women, and the issues of cisgender women are not going to be the same as the issues of transgender women, and making sure that all of those people feel safe, but also feel represented, that their issues are heard, that it's not just a reaction to the current political climate and the current president, but also about issues that have been going on and have been systemic for centuries at this point. The other thing that I have kind of mixed feelings about are the hats, the pink hats. I know a lot of people who wear them, and I get why. I don't personally like those hats. I think that they're kind of exclusionary. I think not everybody's body is pink, and picking that as opposed to a variety of colors is a sign of not necessarily representing everyone. And I get why they have those hats, and I get the quote that prompted them, but they also feel a little exclusionary to me, particularly in regards to including gender non-conforming, non-binary people, trans people. And I've talked to people and I've listened to trans people and such, voice discomfort with that. And I wish that they hadn't made such a big comeback this year. And I really wish they hadn't put it on Harriet Tubman.
On the other hand, you know, when you go through the most recent history of movements or revolutions around the world, they usually adopt the color which is associated with them. One particular, the Orange Revolution, for instance, comes to my mind. I think that it was in Ukraine,
right?
And so on and so forth. And those colors are not necessarily strictly associated. And some of those pink colors are so unlike the color of the skin of anyone.
I mean, it. Without going into the more explicit details of the female body, they picked pink for a reason. And
sure.
Not everybody, A, has that body part, and B, not everybody's body part is pink. And I got to watch last year a whole bunch of people defend that as if that were the point, as opposed to inviting all women into the movement being the point.
Yeah.
So I have kind of mixed feelings on that. What was your issue? Because I know you had one.
I had an issue with being overly policed. That whole march felt simply as almost an over-controlling police presence, where we were really put into those pens.
Yeah, we were very contained.
And I think it is unnecessary. I have observing the documenting of that march throughout the nation and around the world. I think that New York City was the most policed, the presence of the police, and most contained in the whole nation. And I did not see the reason for it. I think it was almost on the edge of really an abuse of power by police. Not necessarily those direct policemen who were there and who were just fulfilling their responsibilities and what they were told to do. But I think that some strategy needs to change, because we were not rowdy, we were just well-behaved marchers, and that heavy policing, I think, was not necessary, definitely. You know, I don't know how you feel about that.
The amount of corralling and preparation that the police had, I think the officers as like individuals,
They're nice.
they were pretty reasonable. It was one of the most positive experiences I've had with the New York City police, and at the same time, it felt like their plan was for something that was much more out of hand than what actually happened.
Yeah.
Like, I do agree with you on that. I think that
Well, you know,
it was
closing all these side streets, for instance, there was no reason for that.
I don't know what the logic for that was.
It actually created an utter chaos and stoppage of traffic several avenues over, because people were simply trying to get into that march and were not allowed. They had to march all the way up, and some told me that they were marching from the 96th Street.
Right.
And really, you know, like creating that very narrow corridor made it even more dangerous than if people were allowed to roam freely, you know, and to walk freely on the streets. And we were last year in Washington, D.C., and one would expect that they would, for that amount of people, they'll be more prepared for it.
Right.
And it was much freer, and nothing happened really during the Women's March. And here we are like preparing for some kind of an upheaval. And churchgoers of roughly my age and older were put into these corrals or pens, and were occasionally divided in between two, simply because they would allow just very few people to move from one to another. I think it was on the edge of being actually dangerous for people. Because,
definitely some
you know,
issues of discomfort there. I think that because the crowd was so calm and because people were mostly in good spirits, that it was fine. I can see how if people were getting anxious or upset, having them totally caged in like that and just like block by block could create some pretty big problems.
Yeah, and you know, comparing it with Philadelphia, we saw the you know, films from helicopters for other places.
Oh yeah, it wasn't.
And New York City was really standing out from Chicago, Los Angeles, Philadelphia. All those other places were much freer than right here, and some of those demonstrations over there were probably of the same size, if not larger. So really, you know, I think that we are now considering talking to our representatives here and doing something about it, because I think that is a constitutional right for assembly. And here that was somehow limited by police. And, you know, I don't want to take it completely from them, that they have responsibility, if you have large crowds, to manage them. But I think this was unnecessary. So that's my point, and something to engage and do. For us to think about pink hats and what to do with New York City police.
Yeah. And in the meantime, let's hope that this is not the only form of activism that people do through the year, that people continue to work for justice, that people continue to work for intersectional feminism, that people continue to work for the rights of refugees and immigrants and of all people in this great nation. Let's not let it stop here.
Writing cards, making telephone calls to your elected representatives, it's also a work of faith.
Yes.